Hello, and welcome to the Techstrong AI podcast. I'm Amanda Rosani, and with me today is Mike Bazard. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. We have a long list to bring you today of many AI topics, and we are going to start with AWS and GitHub. So, Mike, you recently posted an article, and GitHub has shared an approach to building software using generative AI to complete tasks. So can you share a little bit more about this with our audience?
Yeah, well, it turns out that both GitHub and AWS are down the same path. And so this past week, they both announced general availability of a set of tools that you can use to orchestrate tasks that you would use for software development, including running the tests and debugging software and running the documentation. And the interesting thing about this is they're using the reasoning engines in an LLM to asynchronously manage those tasks. So you would put into a prompt that says, I want to build this application and run these tests. And so it would, on the one hand, generate some code to help you write the app. And on the other hand, it would also asynchronously run the tests. So it compresses the whole window of what we today refer to as kind of the DevOps processes. AWS has a version of this that they're calling, I think it's Q for developer or something like that. And this is a version of a thing that they showed at their last conference in last fall. And GitHub showed their version of this last December. And they both magically decided to announce general availability in this past week. And so here we are. It's not clear to me exactly how this is all going to play out, but clearly a lot of the tasks that are bottlenecks today in the DevOps process are going to be automated. So it will dramatically change the way we think about DevOps workflows. Developers may be able to manage more tasks that they previously leaned on a DevOps team for. The DevOps team, instead of manually creating all these scripts, may be supervising a lot of AI assistants that they will orchestrate together and make sure that they're all doing the right thing. And it's going to fundamentally change the software engineering jobs. So to me, it's moved past theory and we're now into the realm of reality. And people can see this, they're going to play with it. And over the course of the next 6 months, I think AI is going to change everything we think we know about software engineering. We just don't know exactly how.
And it seems like a lot of companies are racing to be the first out with tools in this area and hoping that they'll be the ones picked by these companies.
Yeah, I'm a little dubious about that. To be honest, if everybody's going to do the same thing, right? Everybody has access to the same LLMs and the same reasoning engines. It's not clear to me that AI is a reason to move to a new platform. I mean, not having AI is a reason to leave a platform. But, as I continue to look at this, I mean, somebody may be ahead for a couple of weeks, but, it's basically it's a small game of leapfrog before somebody else catches up to them. So I'm not quite clear that AI is going to be such a great differentiator as people initially thought.
Yeah, especially it's constantly evolving, and it's evolving, the technology itself is, and then to the company's needs as well. So those are always changing. All right. Well, moving forward, we're going to talk about LLMs. We've heard a lot about large language models, but we're starting to hear a lot more about small language models. And to that note, Apple and Microsoft are rolling out small language models, and these will allow for them to run locally on devices rather than in the cloud. So what are you hearing as far as why are businesses looking to this direction instead of moving to the cloud?
All right, well, the laws of physics have not been suspended just because of AI. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. And here's the issue. I can't keep routing everything up to the cloud to have some AI model process it. I got to run it locally, and I got to be able to ultimately even one day maybe even train locally. But so speed is everything. I got to have these LLMs at the point where the data is being created and consumed. So we're starting to see just about every piece of software pushed out to the edge. So in that regard, AI models are no different. I think there's going to be a lot more AI models running out at the edge than there will be in the cloud. And I think that this whole thing will wind up being federated in some interesting ways. But who knows? Maybe I'm only using the cloud to train the AI models, and I'm running everything on an inference engine that's at the point where the software is at the edge. It's going to be interesting times. And I don't even know what that processor at the edge is going to be like because, well, GPUs are expensive and hard to find. So if I only need to run the inference engine at the edge with some local LLM capability, I might just run that on, I don't know, ARM, x86, pick your choice, pick your poison. But there's going to be a lot more processor choice. That will be for certain. So we will see what happens in the future. But my bet is this is going to be crucial at the end of the day because, once again, it's all about the speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing to look at is these smaller language models, because they do have less compute power, they're putting out less heat, they're smaller carbon footprints if you divide them up into smaller models. So that's something to look at too. And plus, a lot of these companies don't need these giant large language models. They need something specific tasks only. So, it's more efficient and the return on investment might be better too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So moving on, you wrote an article about TigerGraph, and they've made available a copilot for beta use currently that uses graph tech and vector databases to customize these large language models. So can you share a little bit more about that and how would businesses be utilizing this tool?
Yeah, this stuff is pretty cool when you think about it. So today, if I want to customize an LLM, I got to grab all my data and I stick it in something like a vector database, and I got to go find a bunch of data engineers to go do that. And then hopefully I get some output that I then incorporate into some sort of response. And that's how I kind of extend an LLM, because each LLM is only trained up to a certain date and may not have seen my type of data. So that's how we're trying to customize that. TigerGraph went a step further and they said, well, we have these knowledge graphs that are built on a graph database. And so we know the relationship between all the data that's in your organization. So we can now automate that whole process of showing the data to the LLMs. So you don't have to have a bunch of data engineers figuring everything out. You as an average person will now be able to kick in a prompt, and TigerGraph will manage that whole back-end RAG process in a way that's transparent. So, to me, this was pretty cool, and I'm not quite clear what it means for all our friends in IT, but it means that we can customize LLMs at will.
Well, and that brings us to an interesting article. You mentioned RAG, and Jeff Evernham over on Techstrong AI. We have an article from him about why retrieval augmented generation is the key, better known as RAG. And a big reason is because the data is more reliable using this system and it's more company focused. So what are you hearing as well from business leaders?
Yeah, I hear the same thing. And this just comes back to the issue of, well, all this LLM stuff is awesome, but how do we operationalize it? Because other than the fact that I'm using an LLM that maybe craft a better email, I'm not really taking it to the next level because I can't get my data in front of it. So to me, figuring out all these RAG issues is the key to the whole thing. If we can get that process down and make it so that there's no friction involved, RAG's going to be more important than the LLM ultimately, but maybe just hopefully as transparent as possible.
Yes, and I feel like I'm posting a lot more stories about use cases for RAG, and a lot of business leaders are looking this direction.
Absolutely. Sooner the better.
Okay, so moving on, the National Institutes of Science and Technology, that program has, they've put out a platform to identify AI versus human outputs. So, and they're utilizing this to try to, scan for, fake information and information pulled that shouldn't be being used, copyright issues and cybersecurity issues. There's many reasons why they're putting this platform out, but what are you hearing?
It's a good thing. It's just my question is, okay, so now NIST has built essentially a framework, or at least identified a framework. Somebody's still got to go actually write the code to make that thing a reality. So I believe that all these things are going to be critical. I mean, security, once again, is chasing after the latest and greatest innovation, but we're getting to the point now where at least people understand what the issues are. So if we can get some common solutions for doing that and the capabilities are there, I'm not sure if they can identify the content as precisely as they might like, but they certainly can do a better job, and we can identify all these deep fakes. And we will need to figure out, how to do all this stuff. It's a work in progress. It's interesting that the government's involved at this level. I know that the folks at NSA are worried about cybersecurity AI, and then there's NIST, and then there's CISA, and all that other alphabet soup of agencies in Washington who are turning their attention to this because I think there was an executive order from the Biden administration about it. I'm just not quite clear how the public-private partnership is working out here exactly, but everybody's saying the right things.
Yeah, and we seem to be seeing all the government entities across the world starting to get really involved in AI regulation, AI laws, just because the technology is evolving so rapidly. And with all the good comes all the bad that has to be looked at, and how can they fight against threats from AI is a real concern.
And the bad guys are fast and the governments are not so fast. So I'm hoping that the companies can step in the middle of that and maybe even that playing field a little bit.
Yes. Well, that brings us to, this is really interesting. Paul's kind of in this realm of smart cities, and LA, their metro bus system is utilizing AI to help with identifying illegally parked vehicles by scanning license plates, among various other things. And we're seeing more of cities utilizing AI and camera systems and things like that. So what are your thoughts?
I'm hopeful. I'm not sure. I mean, we've been at this technology thing for traffic for as long as I can remember, figuring out how the optimal routing thing for, essentially it's a system, but it involves people, and people do weird things for no apparent reasons that are hard to predict. So you've been in traffic, you've been driving, and somebody shifts lane, not for any particular purpose, just because they got bored in the lane that they're in. Well, I don't know how a machine is going to predict that and then translate that back to something a bus can consume in an interesting way. But arguably, probably can't get any worse than it currently is. So there's something to be said for that. But we've been at this use case for as long as I can remember. I'm hopeful that something is happening here that is not just throwing tech at something because cities have budgets, but maybe there'll come a day. Maybe it's just a matter of making sure that there's less traffic in the first place with things like congestion pricing. I'm sure that's not popular in a lot of places, but something's got to give.
Yeah, and I think that it'll come down to how they harness this data. How much data are they collecting, the reliability of the data, and then how do they sift through it and then use that to make smart decisions?
Right. And even if you get my license plate, right? Well, I might be driving on that road a lot, but 10% of the vehicles are probably from out of state or somebody who's just kind of there on a random moment. And how do you predict that?
Yeah, absolutely. Still some things to iron out there, but it seems like an interesting possible solution. And with that, we are done with our list for today. If you want to go to Techstrong AI, you can read the full articles there and get all the information, and let us know what you're interested in. So until next week, have a wonderful day. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Take care.